Hollywood's golden age wasn't just glamorous, it was absolutely scandalous behind the scenes. Believe it or not, some of the era's most jaw-dropping movies were yanked from theaters, gutted by censors, or outright banned for being too dangerous for your eyes. What did it take for a 1930s or 1940s film to be considered so shocking it had to be hidden away? Stick around, because these classics broke the rules, made the headlines, and now you can finally watch them all. The Outlaw, 1943. If you thought 1940s Hollywood was prim and proper, The Outlaw will set you straight. Howard Hughes didn't just produce a Western, he engineered a scandal. Jane Russell's debut as a sultry saloon girl, complete with a plunging neckline that had censors practically short-circuiting, sent the moral guardians of America into full panic mode. The Catholic Legion of Decency slapped it with a condemned rating, and local boards banned or butchered the movie in state after state. Hughes, ever the showman, stoked the fire by hyping up the controversy in every newspaper he could. He even invented a new bra for Russell, which she reportedly never wore, just to make sure the movie's buzz never died. The film was held back for years, cut, recut, and finally released in 1946. But by then, the legend had overtaken the movie itself. All that fuss. The actual film is a slow-burn Western with a few steamy scenes and enough suggestive dialogue to make censors clutch their pearls. Today, The Outlaw stands as a monument to the idea that the surest way to make a movie legendary is to try to ban it. Want to see what had 1940s America in an uproar? You can watch The Outlaw uncut, and maybe even chuckle at what once passed for indecency. Scarface, 1932. Paul Mooney's 1932 gangster was the original bad boy who nearly shut down Hollywood itself. Scarface is violence, film so wild, it basically invented movie censorship. Censors hated its brutal shootouts, its glorification of crime, and the way it thumbed its nose at authority. Italian-American groups protested, politicians fumed, and several states banned the movie entirely. In Chicago, they even threatened to burn down theaters, morality speeches, and alternate endings where crime doesn't pay. Producer Howard Hughes, yes, the same Hughes from The Outlaw, fought back, pulling the movie from distribution and refill fresh, even after almost a century. If you want to see the movie that made the censors rewrite the rulebook and paved the way for every gangster flick that followed, Prohibition-era glory. Freaks, 1932. When MGM unleashed Freaks in 1932, they had no idea they were about to cause one of the biggest scandals in Hollywood history. Directed by Todd Browning, Freaks was set in a traveling carnival and featured real sideshow performers with physical differences. Instead of horror movie monsters, Browning treated his cast with empathy and humanity, a move that was both ahead of its time and way too much for Depression-era America. Test audiences ran screaming from the theater. One woman sued MGM, claiming the film caused her to miscarry. Major cities banned it outright, while others demanded it be chopped down to barely over an hour. Critics branded it grotesque, depraved, and unfit for civilized society. For decades, Freaks was almost impossible to find, locked away as Hollywood's greatest shame. But here's the twist. Later generations rediscovered it, and it's now hailed as a cult classic, one that flips the script on who the real monsters are. Watch it for the unforgettable chant, "One of us, and you'll understand why Freaks still sparks debate about exploitation, empathy, and what makes a film truly shocking. Today, you can see it uncensored and decide for yourself, exploitation or misunderstood masterpiece. Babyface, 1933. If you think Hollywood only recently discovered the power of a femme fatale, you need to meet Barbara Stanwyck in Babyface. This 1933 pre-code classic was so scandalous it basically forced Hollywood to invent new censorship rules overnight. Stanwyck plays Lily, a tough-talking, street-smart beauty who climbs the corporate ladder by seducing her way through an entire office building, literally floor by floor. The original version showed her sleeping her way to the top without a hint of regret or punishment, sending the moral watchdogs of America into meltdown. The Hayes Office, Hollywood's censorship bureau, demanded heavy cuts and a new ending where Lily is punished for her sins. Some cities refused to screen the film altogether, and the original cut disappeared for decades. But here's the secret. Babyface is razor-sharp, cynical, and deliciously modern, even by today's standards. In 2004, the uncut version was finally restored and released. and critics realized it's one of the smartest and gutsiest movies of its era. If you want to see the film that taught Hollywood both the power and the peril of a woman who knows exactly what she wants, Babyface is streaming, unfiltered, and every bit as spicy as it was in 1933. The Moon is Blue, 1953. How does a rom-com become public enemy number one? Just ask The Moon is Blue, the 1953 comedy that proved even the suggestion of sex could set off a national firestorm. Directed by Otto Preminger, this movie was daring for one simple reason. It dared to say words like virgin, seduce, and pregnant out loud, gasp, in a mainstream Hollywood film. That was enough for the Production Code Authority to refuse it a seal of approval, and Catholic groups to denounce it as immoral. Many theaters refused to screen it. Entire states tried to ban it. But instead of folding, United Artists and Preminger doubled down, releasing it without the code's blessing and triggering a censorship showdown that went all the way to the Supreme Court. The result? The Moon is Blue became a box office smash, proving audiences could handle a little grown-up talk and opening the floodgates for more frank discussions of sex in American cinema. Today, it plays as a light, charming battle of the sexes, a far cry from the dirty film the censors feared. If you want to watch the movie that dared to say virgin and changed Hollywood forever, it's just a click away. The Story of Temple Drake, 1933. Some movies don't just test the limits, they blast right through them. The Story of Temple Drake is that kind of film. Released in 1933, at the height of Hollywood's pre-code era, this adaptation of William Faulkner's scandalous novel, Sanctuary, pulled zero punches. Miriam Hopkins plays Temple Drake, a reckless Southern belle whose downward spiral into violence, vice, and sexual assault stunned Depression-era America. The movie dared to depict rape, murder, and moral collapse on screen, topics so radioactive that censors went into meltdown mode, churches and community groups demanded bans, and entire states refused to screen it. Newspapers declared it indecent, and Hollywood's own moral guardians shuddered. But here's the twist. The film's notoriety did more than sell tickets. It helped usher in the strict sanitized Hays Code, changing American movies for decades. For years, Temple Drake was nearly impossible to see outside rare archival screenings. Today, with the code long gone, it's available to anyone curious enough to witness the film that proved sometimes telling the truth about darkness is the most dangerous thing Hollywood can do. Hopkins is riveting, the atmosphere is charged, and every minute is a time capsule of taboo-busting cinema history. The Miracle, 1950, was blunt. Roberto Rossellini and distributor Joseph Burstyn fought back, taking their case to the U.S. Supreme Court. The result, a landmark ruling that declared movies were protected as free speech under the First Amendment. The ruling changed American film forever, shifting censorship power away from city and church censors. While The Miracle itself might seem tame to modern eyes, its legacy is explosive. It's now preserved, restored, and ready for any viewer who wants to see how cinema fought and won the right to speak its mind. The Children's Hour, 1961. In 1961, Hollywood was still terrified of certain subjects, especially anything to do with homosexuality. Enter The Children's Hour, a drama so controversial it was almost too hot for theaters, even as the studio tried to downplay its true topic. Based on Lillian Hellman's play, the film stars Audrey Hepburn and Shirley MacLaine as schoolteachers whose lives are destroyed by a student's accusation of a lesbian relationship. The result? Scandal, social exile, and tragedy. The Hays Code still loomed, so the original play's subtext was dialed back in earlier adaptations, but director William Wyler and his cast refused to pull punches in 1961. The very idea of depicting same-sex love, even tragically, had censors on high alert, with some theaters refusing to screen it and several states pushing for bans. The film's honest approach was revolutionary, opening doors for later stories about LGBTQ themes. MacLane's performance in particular is haunting and brave, capturing a pain and truth Hollywood tried to silence for decades. Today, The Children's Hour is a must-watch for anyone who wants to understand how a simple lie could once destroy lives, and how film, little by little, began to tell the truth. Forever Amber, 1947. When Forever Amber hit screens in 1947, it promised to be Hollywood's answer to Gone with the Wind, but instead it became one of the most controversial films of its decade. Based on Kathleen Windsor's racy, best-selling novel, the film follows Amber St. Clair, a woman who climbs from poverty to the British court using nothing but her wits and wiles. That means a lot of sex, seduction, and scandal, way more than 1940s censors could stomach. The Catholic Legion of Decency slammed it as immoral, pushing for a boycott and forcing Fox to make extensive cuts. Church groups called for bans, some states restricted showings, and the press couldn't stop wringing its hands. But here's the kicker. All the outrage only made people more curious. Despite the cuts, the film's costumes, melodrama, and Linda Darnell's star turn kept the public buzzing. Forever Amber proved that controversy sells, and sometimes a little moral panic is just what a studio needs. Today, you can see it uncut and judge for yourself if it lives up to the hype. Was it truly scandalous, or just another Hollywood soap opera dressed in forbidden finery? The Big Sleep, 1946. The most confusing film noir of all time, maybe. The most censored, that's a strong contender too. The Big Sleep, starring Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall, is a labyrinth of murder, blackmail, and double crosses. When it was filmed in 1945, its steamy subplots and sexual innuendo were a red flag for censors. The original version featured a complex web of adult situations, pornography, implied homosexuality, and more, straight from Raymond Chandler's hard-boiled novel. The Hays office swooped in, forcing reshoots and cuts that turned the final film into a riddle even its creators couldn't solve. Fans debated who killed whom for decades, partly because key scenes were trimmed or rewritten to dodge scandal. Overseas, especially in the UK, the film faced additional cuts and restrictions. The original, racier version was locked away until decades later. Today, The Big Sleep is a classic noir you can watch uncut, a puzzle box of sex, violence, and snappy dialogue. If you want to see just how wild and cleverly subversive Golden Age movies could be, Bogart and Bacall's steamiest outing is finally yours to decipher in all its shadowy glory. The Maltese Falcon, 1931. You know the Humphrey Bogart version, but the original The Maltese Falcon from 1931 was so scandalous, it vanished for over a decade. This early adaptation of Dashiell Hammett's hard-boiled novel had everything the censors hated. Bedroom scenes, unpunished criminals, and sexual innuendo that would make even a detective blush. Ricardo Cortez played Sam Spade as a wisecracking womanizer, and the film didn't shy away from Hammett's original grit. The Hays Code was still a few years away, but the backlash was immediate. The movie was labeled indecent by local and church censors and was outright banned in some cities. Once the code took effect in 1934, the film was pulled from circulation entirely, labeled too racy for polite society. It took the famous 1941 remake to put the title back in public consciousness, but it wasn't until decades later that the 1931 version was finally restored for home video. Watching it now, you'll see why the censors panicked. This Maltese Falcon is brisk, bawdy, and surprisingly modern. It's a glimpse into a Hollywood that was a lot less buttoned up than people remember, and a fascinating time capsule for fans of noir and scandal alike. The Miracle of Morgan's Creek, 1944. How do you smuggle a wild, subversive comedy past 1940s censors? Preston Sturges did it with The Miracle of Morgan's Creek, and made history in the process. This screwball masterpiece centers on Trudy Cockenlocker. Yes, that's really her name. A small-town girl who gets drunk, marries a mystery soldier, and winds up pregnant, all while barely remembering what happened. The Hays office nearly had a heart attack, objecting to everything from the title to the implied promiscuity and illegitimacy. But Sturges, ever the trickster, hid his most outrageous jokes behind rapid-fire dialogue, absurd plot twists, and enough slapstick to keep the censors off balance. The film became a sly commentary on wartime America, small-town hypocrisy, and the very rules that tried to shut it down. Critics raved, audiences howled, and the movie became one of the biggest hits of 1944. Today, The Miracle of Morgan's Creek still feels edgy and fresh, a reminder that even in the most buttoned-up era, Hollywood always found a way to sneak a little anarchy past the gatekeepers. Stream it and marvel at what they got away with under the noses of the censors. Blackboard Jungle, 1955. Rock and roll riots in the aisles, that's Blackboard Jungle. Released in 1955, this gritty tale of urban high school chaos wasn't just a movie. It was an earthquake. Glenn Ford stars as a teacher up against unruly students, racial tension, and the explosive power of juvenile delinquency. But it was the use of Bill Haley's Rock Around the Clock that lit the fuse. Teenagers danced in theater aisles, some even trashed seats, and authorities across the globe freaked out. The film was banned or heavily censored in cities from Memphis, Tennessee to Memphis, Egypt, seriously. Some called it subversive, blaming it for corrupting youth and glorifying rebellion. In the UK, certain scenes were cut, and Ireland banned it outright. But for many, Blackboard Jungle was a wake-up call, raw, honest, and electric. It jump-started rock's takeover of American culture and made it clear that the kids were not all right. Today, the movie's impact echoes in every teen drama and music-driven rebellion that followed. Watch it and see why one film could shake adults and thrill a generation with just 3 guitar chords. Island of Lost Souls, 1932. Long before horror movies got away with anything, Island of Lost Souls was banned for being simply too disturbing. Based on H.G. Wells' The Island of Dr. Moreau, this 1932 chiller starred Charles Laughton as the unhinged Dr. Moreau, who turns animals into humans with grotesque results. The film's monsters weren't just rubber masks. They were walking, talking proof that Hollywood could make audiences squirm. The British Board of Film Censors refused it a certificate for over 25 years. Several U.S. cities banned it on religious and moral grounds, horrified by its blasphemous "Are we not men?" speech and hints of bestiality. In Australia, it was considered too intense for the public, while other countries demanded cuts that gutted the film. Yet what remains is a marvel, creepy, atmospheric, and daring even by today's standards. Island of Lost Souls still packs a punch, with unforgettable makeup effects and a performance from Laughton that feels both camp and chilling. The film was lost to many for decades, but now it's back, and horror fans can finally see what all the fuss and all the bans were about. The Great Dictator, 1940. Charlie Chaplin may be known as the world's greatest clown, but with The Great Dictator, he became Hollywood's boldest rebel. Released in 1940, before America even entered World War II, Chaplin's fearless satire took aim at Adolf Hitler and fascism itself. He played both a Hitler look-alike and a humble Jewish barber, juggling slapstick with pointed political commentary. The film was so controversial that some U.S. allies, eager to appease Germany, tried to ban it. American censors debated blocking it for political reasons, while Nazi sympathizers threatened violence at screenings. Several countries, including Germany, Italy, and neutral Ireland, banned it outright. Chaplin, undaunted, refused to edit a frame, and the film's final speech became one of cinema's greatest moments of moral clarity. At home, it was a box office hit, but The Great Dictator was banned in many places for years. Today, it's recognized as both a comedic masterwork and a defiant act of resistance. If you want to see just how much power a single movie can wield against tyranny, Chaplin's masterpiece is ready for your playlist. The Garden of Allah, 1936. Lush technicolor, desert passion, and a forbidden romance sounds like the perfect escapist fantasy, right? But The Garden of Allah didn't just serve up exotic spectacle in 1936, it tiptoed right up to the line of what was acceptable for Depression-era America. Marlene Dietrich plays a convent escapee who finds herself entangled with a mysterious, brooding stranger in North Africa. The steamy chemistry, heavy religious undertones, and innuendo-laden script sent censors scurrying. The production code demanded edits to downplay the sexual tension and, most importantly, to keep the story's fallen woman from being too sympathetic. Foreign censors were even harsher. Some banned the film outright for immorality and blasphemy. Critics debated whether the lush cinematography and spiritual themes redeemed the risque content or only made it more dangerous. The uproar helped cement Dietrich's status as Hollywood's reigning symbol of forbidden allure. Today, you can watch The Garden of Allah in all its vivid color and scandalous romance, and decide for yourself if its blend of sensuality and spirituality was worth all the drama. One thing's for sure, for a movie about searching for peace, it caused a storm. Payton Place, 1957. Payton Place didn't just air dirty laundry, it put it up in neon lights. Adapted from Grace Metalius's explosive bestseller, the 1957 film dared to bring rape, incest, teenage pregnancy, and hypocrisy to the big screen. For 1950s America, that was more than just bold, it was grounds for a ban. The production code fought tooth and nail to cut every hint of immorality, but even after multiple rewrites and sanitizations, the film's frank look at small-town secrets still sent church groups and censors into a frenzy. Some cities banned it outright, others issued warnings. and southern states were especially outraged at the depiction of respected families with skeletons in every closet. But controversy fueled curiosity, and Payton Place became a massive hit, earning 9 Oscar nominations and launching a new wave of adult melodramas. Today, what once seemed scandalous plays as a sharp, dramatic snapshot of mid-century repression and rebellion. You can stream Payton Place uncut now, and it still feels surprisingly fresh, and a reminder that sometimes telling the truth is the most rebellious act of all. The Damned Don't Cry, 1950. If you like your Golden Age films with a side of pulp, The Damned Don't Cry delivers. Joan Crawford stars as a working-class woman who claws her way to the top of the criminal underworld. No apologies, no regrets. The 1950 release raised eyebrows immediately. Crawford's character uses sex, ambition, and a willingness to break every rule in the book to get what she wants. The censors bristled at the open portrayal of female sexuality, criminal partnerships, and a lack of proper punishment. Religious groups called for bans, claiming it glamorized immorality and undermined family values. Some states demanded cuts, others slapped on restrictive ratings or even blocked screenings. The film didn't help itself by making crime and Crawford look so good, yet audiences flocked to see Crawford at her most ruthless. And The Damned Don't Cry became a hit, cementing her as the queen of noir melodrama. Today, it stands as a fierce, stylish, and still surprisingly raw thriller, ready to stream for anyone who wants a taste of old-school Hollywood controversy with their femme fatale fix. Rope, 1948. Alfred Hitchcock loved pushing buttons, but Rope might be his boldest act of rebellion. Released in 1948, the film is famous for its one-take style and nerve-wracking tension, but what really set off censors was its subtext. The plot, about 2 young men who murder a classmate for intellectual kicks, was inspired by the real-life Leopold and Loeb case, infamous for its hints of homosexuality and moral decay. Hollywood's production code was so nervous about the implied relationship between the killers that the script was endlessly revised, with entire scenes cut and dialogue scrubbed clean. Even so, the undertones were unmistakable, and Rope was banned or restricted in several U.S. cities and outright rejected in foreign markets like Japan and Germany. Hitchcock slyly pushed the envelope, making a movie that critics and censors couldn't quite pin down, but audiences knew something was up. Today, Rope is celebrated for its suspense and sly social commentary, and you can watch it exactly as Hitchcock intended, tight, tense, and just subversive enough to still raise eyebrows. Gilda, 1946. If you want to see the scene that made Rita Hayworth a legend and scandalized censors worldwide, look no further than Gilda. This 1946 noir classic is wrapped around Hayworth's unforgettable striptease, but it's the film's simmering sexuality and moral ambiguity that really set off alarms. The Hays office demanded cuts to dialogue, wardrobe, and entire scenes to avoid a ban, but even their edits couldn't hide the heat between Hayworth and Glenn Ford. In some cities, Gilda was slapped with restrictions, and moral crusaders campaigned against it as a danger to public decency. Overseas, several countries demanded further censorship, objecting to everything from the film's romantic double crosses to its hints of sadomasochism. Despite or because of all the fuss, Gilda became a sensation, making Hayworth the most desired woman in Hollywood and cementing the film's status as a must-see for lovers of forbidden allure. Today, you can stream Gilda in all its sizzling, subversive glory. Just don't be surprised if you still blush at the line, "Are you decent?" because Gilda never is. Tarzan and His Mate, 1934. If you think classic Hollywood was all modesty and restraint, Tarzan and His Mate will change your mind in a single jaw-dropping scene. Released in 1934, the second Tarzan film, starring Johnny Weissmuller and Maureen O'Sullivan, is infamous for its nearly nude underwater ballet. O'Sullivan's double, swimming nude through jungle waters, was so daring it sent censors into a full meltdown. The production code was just taking effect, and Tarzan and His Mate became one of its first high-profile casualties. The film was pulled from theaters, recut, and the controversial sequence axed entirely in later releases. Religious and parental groups called for bans, arguing it would corrupt the nation's youth. For decades, most audiences saw only the sanitized version, missing out on the original's frank, sensual energy. But once restoration efforts began in the 1980s, that notorious scene and the full, uncut film came roaring back. Now, Tarzan and His Mate is both a time capsule of pre-code freedom and a cheeky reminder that Hollywood was breaking rules long before anyone noticed. Dive in and see why censors never quite tamed the jungle. Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, 1958. Tennessee Williams's steamy play about mendacity, longing, and forbidden love was always going to stir up trouble. But when MGM adapted Cat on a Hot Tin Roof for the screen in 1958, they ran smack into the brick wall of Hollywood censorship. Paul Newman plays Brick, a former athlete brooding over loss and desire, while Elizabeth Taylor sizzles as his desperate wife, Maggie. The problem? The play's core. Brick's repressed homosexuality and the emotional fallout was a taboo the production code wouldn't touch. Studio executives demanded all explicit references be erased, fearing bans from both censors and conservative audiences. Even with the cuts, the subtext was clear, and several southern cities and international markets restricted or banned the film outright. Critics noticed the tension and lamented what was left unsaid, but audiences still flocked to see Taylor and Newman smolder on screen. Today, the film's daring honesty peeks through its coded language, and its story of yearning and secrets resonates more than ever. Cat on a Hot Tin Roof is now celebrated for what it got away with, and for the forbidden emotions Hollywood tried, but failed, to hide. The Women, 1939. How do you make a movie about divorce, infidelity, and social climbing in 1939 and still get it past the censors? The Women did it with wit, sass, and a groundbreaking all-female cast. Norma Shearer, Joan Crawford, and Rosalind Russell led a cast of 130 women, and not a single man appears on screen. The plot was scandalous. Upper-class wives gossiping, scheming, and battling over cheating husbands in New York high society. The Hayes office tried to rein in the dialogue, demanding softer language and toned-down innuendo, but director George Cukor and screenwriter Anita Luce snuck plenty past the censors. Still, some states and cities banned the film for undermining family values and glamorizing divorce. Church groups picketed, and reviews called it too daring for polite society. But audiences loved the sly humor and raw honesty, and the film became a hit. Today, The Women is hailed as a feminist classic that lampooned the very hypocrisy censors wanted to protect. Stream it now and marvel at how much trouble Hollywood's Golden Girls could stir up without a single man in sight. The Postman Always Rings Twice, 1946. Film noir was made for trouble, and The Postman Always Rings Twice might be the most infamous of them all. Based on James M. Cain's racy novel, the 1946 adaptation stars Lana Turner as a sultry waitress and John Garfield as the drifter who becomes her lover and partner in murder. The film's themes of lust, betrayal, and cold-blooded homicide sent the censors into panic mode. The production code demanded major changes. Steamy scenes were cut, the violence softened, and the adulterous passion had to be suggested instead of shown. Even with the edits, the heat was unmistakable, and some local boards tried to ban or further restrict the film. Church groups warned it would corrupt audiences, but the controversy only boosted its profile. The Postman Always Rings Twice became a sensation, its shadowy sexuality and simmering suspense echoing through noir history. Today, you can watch it uncensored and see just how close Golden Age Hollywood got to breaking all the rules, proving you don't need graphic scenes to steam up the screen. Duel in the Sun, 1946. When is a Western not just a Western? When it's Duel in the Sun, a technicolor explosion of lust, jealousy, and violence that earned the nickname Lust in the Dust. Produced by David O. Selznick in 1946, the film stars Jennifer Jones as a mixed-race woman caught in a deadly love triangle with two feuding brothers, played by Gregory Peck and Joseph Cotton. Selznick wanted an adult Western with raw sexuality, feverish passion, and racial tension, all taboo for the censors. The production code fought him on every front. Scenes were reshot, dialogue rewritten, and entire sequences cut for being too suggestive or too violent. Even after heavy editing, church groups and local authorities condemned the film, with some cities banning it outright for moral depravity. The studio's response? Promote the film as a forbidden spectacle and watch ticket sales soar. Duel in the Sun divided critics but thrilled audiences, paving the way for the more explicit films that would follow. Today, you can stream it in all its overheated glory and decide for yourself if it's art, camp, or just Hollywood breaking every rule in Technicolor. Hollywood's golden age might look polished on the surface, but these films proved the real action was happening in the shadows, where artists pushed boundaries and censors scrambled to keep up. Which of these banned classics shocked you the most? Drop your pick in the comments. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share with your fellow movie rebels. Because history doesn't just repeat itself, it gets remastered. Who knows which forbidden films we'll be celebrating next? Stick around and keep watching boldly.